Looking at our next speaker of the evening, we have Dr. Mallory Terry from McMaster University. Dr. Terry is a cognitive scientist with the McCall McBain Postdoctoral Fellow Teaching and Leadership Program. And she's right here in the Department of Psychology. So she lives in this building a lot of the time. Her focus is on attention, perception, and action, investigating how visual information guides action in a world that just won't sit still. Her work bridges laboratory attention research with real-world performance, revealing how perception shapes coordinated action in contexts like things like sports. We're all watching the Olympics right now. This is where she shines. A fun fact about Mallory, she was born on New Year's Eve. So please welcome Dr. Mallory Terry to the stage.
Elite sport often looks like a test of speed and strength. Yet some of the most decisive moments in high-level competition unfold far too quickly to be explained by physical abilities alone. For example, let's check out Connor McDavid's goal at the Four Nations face-off last year. And if you haven't seen this before, pay attention to 97 in red in front of the net. The puck was on his stick for a fraction of a second. Players are closing in all around him, yet somehow he spots an opening and buries the puck in the back of the net. But what if I told you that when Connor was doing this, he was employing the same cognitive processes that you and I use on a daily basis? For example, think about yourself making a left-hand turn at a busy intersection, pedestrians and cars swirling about. Or maybe you're weaving through a crowded shopping center trying to find your friends as they're rushing towards a store that has a sale. So, how is it that we can attend to what matters and coordinate action among all of this visual chaos in our world? Well, one hypothesis is that we use what's called fingers of instantiation, and we assign these to key objects in our environment to track their locations and provide us with position references. And so, for example, here, Connor might be assigning one of his mind fingers, as I like to call them, to Marner over there, maybe one to the puck, maybe one to that player in front of the net that he might want to pass to, leaving him left with one to pick a spot and bury the puck as he always does. Now, in the laboratory setting, we can model and study these complex visual environments using what's called the multiple object tracking task. And I don't expect you to just take my word for it, so why don't we all try it out? Your job here is to keep track of where all four of these spies are hiding as they scramble around on the screen. Good luck. Okay, so what you probably notice is that it is a tricky task, but it's possible. And what we typically find is young adults can track about 4 objects at once under standard conditions. But we only have 2 eyes, so how do we do this? Let's think back to those mind fingers that I mentioned earlier. So according to these mind fingers, we assign them to key objects in our environment. So likely those objects that were hiding the spies, you would have assigned one to each of those, and they would stick with them to track their locations. But remember, I talked about the fact that these mind fingers also help us to direct action. And so what I did is I really put these mind fingers to the test, and I designed a series of experiments to really test this out. So people were tracking the spies, and in some trials, I asked them to reach out and touch one of the items that they were tracking. Now, because these items should have the mind fingers assigned to them, they should be able to do this pretty quickly because they have that location reference already. Now, on other trials, they had to reach out and touch one of the items that they weren't tracking. And remember, they shouldn't have a mind finger assigned to this item, so they wouldn't have a location reference. They don't know where it is. So what that would mean is they have to reassign one of the mind fingers to this other item, which would slow them down, and they probably would lose that other spy, perhaps as many of you did. So that's what we would expect. Now let's see what we actually found. Okay, so here on the y-axis we have error rates, and we see that when people are tracking while touching items that they're already tracking, they make pretty few errors. But when we ask them to instead reach out and touch items that they're not tracking, we see the error rates more than double. They go way up. And we see the same trend with the response times. So we see here, in that blue bar there, when participants are touching items that they're already tracking, they're pretty fast to do this. That mind finger seems like it's giving them the location reference. But in the green bar there, when they have to reach out and touch items that they're not tracking, there is a cost associated with this and they're much slower. It's almost like touching that item is like tracking an additional item. So it really slows them down. And we see that the mind fingers are doing both tracking and providing them with those location references as we might predict. Okay, so what do we make of all this? How can we use this to better our own lives? Well, if you take one thing away from this, I want you to be mindful of how you're using those precious mind fingers. You only have 4 of them, so when you're driving your car, you might be tempted to reach out and change the song or text your friend. But remember, that's going to take one mind finger away from your important task of tracking the objects on the road. Or if you're Anthony Stolarz, this means you want to avoid cross-checking players in front of the net, so that's going to take one mind finger away from the puck, which is a very important thing to track. Thank you.